So now we're going to talk about determining the number of significant figures when you're given a number. So this is different than when you are measuring and you're trying to figure out how many digits to include in your measurement. This is when you're given a number and you're asked to determine how many numbers are significant in that measurement, that number that you're given. So there's a different couple ways you can memorize the rules for this. There are about 4 rules that tell you what is significant and what isn't. But an easier way to remember those rules is if you remember in terms of the exceptions. So that's what I have here. If you just remember that all digits, all numbers are significant, meaning they would count in terms of you totaling how many significant figures there are. All numbers are significant except zeros to the left of a number. And when we say a number, we mean a number between 1 and 9. So any 0 to the left of a number between 1 and 9. And then zeros to the right of a number if there's no decimal. So if you have zeros to the right, but there is a decimal somewhere in the number, those zeros would count. So zeros to the left at any time, regardless if there's a decimal or not. And zeros to the right don't count if there is no decimal. So we're going to take those rules, keep those rules in mind that we just went over, and we're going to practice here. So we have some numbers here. I think the easiest way is I like to make a little tally mark when it counts, and then you just total up how many tallies you've made. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at these numbers, and we're going to make a mark above it when we say, okay, that number is significant. So if we look at number 11, I think the easiest thing to pick out would be non-zero numbers. So numbers between 1 and 9, basically any number but a 0, always count. They always are significant. You always count them as part of your significant numbers. So we look at number 11, right away, there's a 2. So a 2 is not a 0. Automatically, I know that that is going to count as a significant figure. And then I see that I have 2 zeros to the left of the number. And if I go back and remember my rules, zeros to the left of a number never count. They never count. So those 2 zeros do not count as significant. So the number of significant figures in this number is actually 1. Only the 2 is significant. So if we move on to number 12, again, probably the easiest to pick out is the non-zeros. So that 2 right there, not a 0, it is significant automatically. If I look here again, I have a bunch of zeros, but again, they're to the left of the non-zero, the left of the 2. Doesn't matter if there's a decimal point there. Anytime you have zeros to the left of a number, they don't count. So again, in this number, you only have 1 significant digit. We look at number 13. Again, pick out the non-zeros first. They're the easiest. So we have a 1 and a 2. Those are significant. And we actually have an example here of all 3 types of zeros that you can see. You can see a 0 to the left, a 0 to the right, and this 0 here is between the 1 and the 2. We call that a trapped 0. So regardless of where the decimal is, if you ever have a 0 between 2 non-zeros, so between 2 numbers, that always counts. So this trapped 0 here definitely counts. Make a little tally. We have a 0 to the left, never count. Zeros to the left never count. Zeros to the right, right here, only count if there's a decimal. Well, there's a decimal right here, so that 0 to the right does count. So there we have 4 sig figs. Go to number 14. 5 automatically, non-zero is going to count. We have 3 zeros to the right, but again, right here we have a decimal point. So if you have 3 zeros to the right with a decimal point, all 3 count as significant. So we're going to say that one also has 4 sig figs. 15 looks like it's almost the same. Maybe you're thinking, oh, you put the same number. That was an accident. Not quite. We have the 5. Yes, that's significant. And we have 3 zeros after the 5. But what we're missing here, the difference between 14 and 15, is there is no decimal place at the end of 5,000. So up in 14, look right here, there's a decimal place. In 15, there is no decimal place. So when you have zeros to the right without a decimal, those zeros are not significant. So for 15, again, you only have one sig fig.